About 1.2 billion learners around the planet, whether they liked it or not, were forced into distance learning. And some schools and universities were way better prepared than others. Some, faculty and teachers were way better prepared than others. And I would say some students and parents were either more ready or better prepared than others. We've got all kinds of issues in here. We've got equity issues and access issues and things like that. Let's just start at the high level, though. What so far, from your perspective, are the big takeaways, good, bad, or otherwise, from the last 60 to 90 days?
So yeah, and I'm an MD PhD, so I trained as a physician as well as a researcher, and we used to call these sorts of terrible circumstances that we might learn from, call them experiments of nature. You would never do this to a community or a person, but when things happen like this, you sometimes can really see things that were less visible before. So some of the positive things I think we've seen are that technology, unlike the pandemics previously, especially go way back to the 1918s, technology can make a real difference to maintain communication, to continue connections and work in ways that just haven't been so reliable or useful in decades past. And that's a powerful thing that I think many people have been experiencing and guessing, something might be valuable about this. But now, it's kind of like the legs were kicked out from the stool, and, we've now had to just hang by our technology threads and make it work. And that's where you start to get things that worked well and things that did not work well. But you do see outlines of what can happen going forward. I think another thing that was made, and you alluded to it in your comments, Brandon, that, man, we were not ready for something like this. That especially schools, but right. I would argue companies as well, that, to really just lose completely the classroom setting. In some cases, even as simple as having a valid email address for all the families and students. In right. many communities, 30% or more of students cannot be found electronically, right? And a lot of that was just, well, what for? We'll tell them in school. We don't need to email them things. We'll just hand them paper. And now when it was cut off suddenly, you realize, oh man, we need to have better access. And I think also, both on the health side as well as in the education side, again, especially K through 12, but not only K through 12, the digital divide and issues of context and inequity have really come to the fore. Death rates, just stunning differences among different communities, especially Black and brown communities that are impoverished compared to other communities. But similarly in the education side of people's access, the digital divide and access to devices and bandwidth, or spaces like what we're in, right? We're here all pretty relaxed in our little dedicated spaces while we have this deep conversation. That's not the norm for a whole lot of kids. And so all of those things then have, I think, been really revealed in some ways by what's going on here. The final thing I'd say is, so there was an emergency effort in the spring. It's like, what do we do? What's interesting now is there is some real systematic effort through this summer by teachers and families and school leaders and others to say, okay, how can we do this better in the fall? Knowing that it's likely to be in and out of school for a while, that things are not going back to just normal. And I think that's really promising because people are seeing we have to get better at this, as opposed to, that was that, this is now. And it's like, no, we must get better at this. And I think that's really potentially a fuel source for innovation going forward.